I feel like if Dennis went to Mike on this song and said like, "Oh, Mike, can you help me with the words?" Mike would have looked at the sheet of paper and said, "You should change the words to 'I'm the kind of guy who likes to get around.'"
Oh,
That would have been Mike's suggestion for sure. Wink, wink.
hey everyone, my name is Jake, and welcome to the third and final full season of Good Timin. We hope that you've all been having a great 2025 so far, and we're excited to be back and have many more great discussions about America's band together. To kick off season three of the show, we thought it would be good to cover a Beach Boys solo album that many fans seem to really love and rate highly, Pacific Ocean Blue by Dennis Wilson. As usual with our album discussion episodes, we're first going to cover the album's history and background and talk about how the record came together. Then after that, we'll do a track by track rundown of the album where we discuss each song and share our own thoughts and opinions on them. And then finally, to wrap up, we'll discuss some of the outtakes and extra material that Dennis recorded around the time, including some of the tracks from his unfinished follow up album, Bambu. Joining me tonight, I have my constant companions, Riley, Matt, and Nate. So, as always, I'm happy to have you guys here, and I can't wait to discuss this great album with you all. Before we get into some of the history behind Pacific Ocean Blue, do you guys have any general thoughts on the record that you wanted to share?
Quick, I'll be brief. Probably my favorite Beach Boys solo album. I think it's really heartfelt. It's got a great like blue-eyed soul, funky vibe to it, and I think even if Dennis's vocals aren't in the prime tip-top shape, there's a lot of passion there. Big fan of this record.
I'm a huge, huge fan of this album. It was actually my most listened to album of 2024. And I think it's just so moody and atmospheric and gloomy. And the arrangements are so dense. There's so much character in Dennis's piano playing and the drumming. And in many ways, I almost view this as a semi Beach Boys album, given that four Beach Boys were involved with, or four or five Beach Boys were involved with the making of the album. You had Carl and Mike helping out with the writing. You had Ricky playing drums. You had Bruce doing background vocals and doing some arranging. So it was, even though it was Dennis's first solo album, and I don't mean to take anything away from that, I think it was still very much a group effort. And a lot of the other Beach Boys lent some great contribution as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I'm as big in this album as everybody else is, and I don't think it's from any of the quality. I've just never really put a lot of time into listening to it. However, it does have one of my favorite Dennis Wilson, not just Dennis Wilson, like just one of my favorite Beach Boys solo tracks, and we'll get to that one when we talk about it. But if there is anything I can say about this album, and it says a lot about Dennis himself too, is the album's just full of character. I mean, even in like the worst songwriting moments, it still is full of life and energy and heart. And I can't say the same about a lot of the other Beach Boys solo records, especially in the worst songwriting moments, because there's some pretty bad songwriting moments on some of those. But it's just so full of heart, and you could tell that this was like definitely a passion project of his, because otherwise, I'm sure a lot of these songs would have just been on Beach Boys albums, but they weren't, and it's so uniquely Dennis, and it's a very different product compared to what you would really expect from the band, even especially in this period. So
Yeah, so for me, this album, like a lot of the other later 70s Beach Boys albums, this one did take a little bit of time to grow on me. I've always known that it's been a really beloved record among fans, but for a while there were only like a few songs on here that I really would regularly come back to. That said, after re-listening to this one multiple times over the past few years, I've really grown to love and appreciate it. There's definitely some tracks that work better than others on here, but I do think that it's a really cohesive record overall. And the highlights on here, I honestly rank right up there with some of my favorite Beach Boys songs. And yeah, I just think, like Nate said, it's just a really moving and powerful album. Of course, Dennis was a really complicated person who had a lot of ups and downs in his life. And I think on this record, you can really hear him kind of pouring out all of his emotions and feelings into the music. Like Matt said, his vocals definitely sound a bit rougher on here than they did a few years before. But I would honestly argue that the raspiness almost makes the music even more soulful and desperate sounding, which I think really benefits a lot of the material. Also, as Nate talked about, I think the production on this album is really cool. I think it really elevates a lot of the songs. It's just really heavy and powerful, and I really love how all the different instruments are incorporated into the music. You have like those really cool, funky and blaring horn sections. You have the cool Moog and synthesizer parts, and then also those beautiful string arrangements on the ballads as well. I just think that they add a lot of emotion to the song. So, really cool album, and I also think it's really neat how Dennis played so many of the instruments on here as well. When you look at the credits for a lot of these songs, it's really impressive how many different things he could play. And then also like the huge amount of session musicians that are on the album as well. You have guys like Hal Blaine, James Jamerson, the Motown bassist, just a lot of really, really talented guys on here. So really love this album a lot. I'd personally rank it among the best Beach Boys albums. I'm sad that it's the only official solo album that we got from Dennis because I think he had a lot of potential as a songwriter. But what we did get is really damn good. So I love the album, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys tonight. All right, so now
Beautifully
get
put.
into some of the history behind Pacific Ocean Blue. I'm going to hand things over to Matt. So, Matt, do you want to talk a bit about how the album came together and also what led Dennis to pursue a solo career?
Sure. So really, we start in 1968. That was when Dennis really started writing songs in earnest. You starting with the Friends LP. So he was encouraged to explore this outlet by Bruce. Bruce was the one who first showed him really how to play piano, and I know he said his wife at the time said like he brought in a big piano, he was playing it all the time. Many of Dennis's songs from this era became fan favorites like Little Bird, Be With Me, Forever, and Slip On Through. Now, for Dennis's first flirtations with solo material, that came about in 1970. There was a 45 that was Sound of Free, the B-side being Lady. This was released exclusively in Britain on the stateside label. It was credited to Dennis Wilson and Rumbo. Rumbo being the Beach Boys' then keyboard player Daryl Dragon, who was later known as Captain of Captain and Tennille fame. Sound of Free was a Dennis Mike co-write, while Lady was written solely by Dennis. The single didn't sell particularly well, but Lady was performed on the David Frost Show on February 25th, 1971. After the single, Dennis did record a few more tracks with Daryl Dragon, but most of these were never completed. Many of them have been released on bootlegs, usually under the title of Poops, Freckles, or Hubba Hubba. Some of these tracks were also released on the Field Flows box set, but a lot of them are very primitive. Some of them is like just instrumentation. There's like nothing there. Now, as far as what would eventually become Pacific Ocean Blue, that really started in 1974. Around that time, Carl Dennis and engineer Stephen Moffat had set up Brothers Studios for the group. The studio became an oasis for Dennis. It was a place where he could record any ideas that came to mind at any given time. He began to record several tracks, but felt unsupported in his efforts to finish the songs, as he felt he didn't have encouragement to put together a solo album. That all changed when James William Guercio, who managed and produced the band Chicago, entered the picture. Guercio began to manage the Beach Boys as well, and brought the Beach Boys and Chicago together for a highly successful stadium tour in 1975 that even outsold the Rolling Stones in some markets. Guercio would jam together with Dennis on songs backstage at sound checks and in hotel rooms after the shows. It was Guercio who finally gave Dennis the support to complete a solo record. He signed him to Caribou, that was his label. They just had distribution from CBS Records, which is now part of Sony Music. And Guercio actually was asked by Dennis to remix some of the songs because Dennis wanted somebody else to kind of come in and take a look at what he was doing. And he actually said, no, I'm not going to do that because I want you to present this material as like coming from you. I don't want to, put something in there and modify it and put my own influence into it. So by the mid 70s, Dennis's voice had changed drastically. He never had as youthful sounding or as like kind of angelic sounding of a voice as like Brian and Carl, but there was like a nice earnestness to his earlier vocal work that you can hear on some songs, like especially like something like In the Back of My Mind. By the 70s, though, Dennis's voice had become grizzled and raspy, ravaged by copious amounts of cigarettes and alcohol and cocaine, as well as a throat injury he sustained in 1974. Allegedly, he had been karate chopped in the throat by an overzealous bouncer at the Red Onion restaurant in Redondo Beach when he attempted to push past the doorman and onto the dance floor barefoot. Dennis's appearance had also changed. This was around the time that he had acquired the Harmony sailboat, which he kept docked in Marina del Rey. And as he started spending more time on this boat, he started getting more muscular. His skin started getting more tan from spending out in the sun so much. He started growing his hair down long past his shoulders, and he started sporting a long bushy beard. So he no longer looked like a beach boy; he was a beach man. Um, the final big change in Dennis's life at this point in time was meeting his next great love, Karen Lamb, in October of 1974. She was an actress and model who had briefly been married to Robert Lamb of Chicago years before, ironically enough. Dennis himself had by this point in time been married and divorced twice, and he would soon be married and divorced with Karen twice. Their relationship was very tumultuous, full of both passionate love and passionate fights. Some people in the Beach Boys camp actually felt that she was a negative influence just because, like I said, the fights would get really, really heated. But she ended up being a big muse for Dennis on Pacific Ocean Blue. She inspired many of the love songs, and she actually even co-wrote Time and You and I with him. Now, the bulk of this material was recorded from the fall of 1976 to the spring of 1977 at Brother Studios. Dennis had co-produced the album with longtime friend and writing partner Greg Jacobson, who recalled that this was when Dennis fully accepted himself as an artist. Dennis was never the most technically proficient instrumentalist, but he had a knack for getting the most of any instrument he seemed to pick up. So on Pacific Ocean Blue, he played various keyboards, synthesizers, harmonica, drums, and other percussion, and even the tuba, violin, and cello, which is very impressive. The album also features contributions from many longtime associates of the Beach Boys, such as Carly Munoz, Hal Blaine, Ricky Vittar, Dean Torrance, Billy Hinchy, Carl Bruce. Mike has some co-writes on there. And one of my favorite quotes ever about this album was once described by a writer of The Guardian as Kurt Cobain produced by Phil Spector. Lyrically,
Yeah.
the album deals with nature, love, and loss. The songs have been described as being the window into Dennis's soul, as they are more anguish and melancholy than often displayed in the Beach Boys' biggest hits. I saw a quote one time that said that this is not Brian's beach with like people in the cars and surfboard. This is like Dennis's like, torment and like anguish and everything. Um, it was released on August 22nd, 1977. Originally received mixed reviews, but in retrospect has been received warmly. AllMusic giving it 4.5 stars out of 5. Rolling Stone giving it 4 stars out of 5, calling it a small masterpiece. Pitchfork giving it 8.5 out of 10. This peaked originally at number 96 on the Billboard charts, was on the charts for about 12 weeks, but allegedly sold more than what the Beach Boys had been putting out around that time. When it was reissued, did even better on the charts. There was a planned tour for this. It was pulled for various reasons, including the fact that Dennis wanted a small string section. The label said no. Pressure from the Beach Boys camp, and like basically they're saying like you tore this, you're out, and also his like increasing unreliable professional behavior. This was also originally released on CD in 1991, was pulled very quickly due to disagreements over copyright. And as a result, this was kind of a lost album for many years, and this kind of became like a holy grail for a lot of people. When it was reissued in 2008 on the Legacy label, which is Sony's their label for like their back catalog, glowing reviews, number 16 in the UK. So there's kind of like people like really were discovering it. And this is like really when this album started gaining wider appeal and wider audience. So yeah, that's basically the background on Pacific Ocean Blue.
A couple of quotes I wanted to share about Dennis and kind of his work around this time. So something that I thought was interesting. David Leaf asked Dennis around the time about Brian's influence on his music and if Brian had been Dennis's biggest influence. And Dennis said, "Not influence, inspiration. There's a difference. I think musically, I'm far apart from Brian. He's 100 times what I am musically. Our music is different. I think he has been a profound influence on my life. If I were to say that I had a master, Brian would be the man I'd say has guided and helped me through everything." So I thought that was a really cool quote. There's also an interesting quote from studio engineer John Hanlon, who said that Dennis was really big on working with different bass lines. It was like he was trying to prove he could be as creative as Brian, though he would never ever say that out loud. But you could tell that there was this sort of angst inside of him. It was like he had these strong creative impulses kicking against the public image of the sex symbol, the surfer, and the drummer, which I thought was interesting as well.
I
No,
think it's a very similar situation to George Harrison's in that for most of the Beach Boys' career to this point, Dennis was really lucky to get one or two songs on an album, just like George Harrison's situation. And when the Beatles finally broke up and George got to do All Things Must Pass, you saw this outpouring of emotion and of material. And I think it's a similar kind of thing with Dennis, even though the Beach Boys hadn't broken up per se. When Dennis finally got this opportunity to make the solo album, he just had this huge wealth of material stockpiled that the Beach Boys had either rejected or not been fans of, or they couldn't finish it. So when he finally had this opportunity, you can just tell that he had been, waiting for the moment for this to happen and he was ready for it.
I totally agree. I think it's a great comparison. Another interesting thing too, and Nate kind of touched on this a little bit, and I think Matt did too, but I think it's really neat too how the other Beach Boys kind of helped Dennis achieve his vision with this album. You know, you had Carl coming in, contributing quite a bit musically, playing guitar on songs and providing some backing vocals. I read there was a quote that said that I know Carl around this time was dealing with a lot of back pain. I think he had gone through some surgery or kind of just messed up his back. So he was dealing with a lot of pain around this time, and despite all that pain, you know, he'd still show up to the studio, sometimes having to sit down, you know, while he was recording his parts. But he was happy to do it for Dennis. So I thought that that was really kind of a touching thing. And then obviously, I know Mike contributed lyrics to Pacific Ocean Blues, which is really cool. And then Bruce did some vocal arrangements on, I believe, End of the Show. So that's really neat as well. And I know, you know, like Matt said, there was some pressure from the Beach Boys management for Dennis not to go on like a solo tour or do his own thing. But I think the boys themselves did support Dennis quite a bit. So I think that that's really sweet of them. So
Yeah. And if you look at the liner notes, God bless you, Bruce. So that shows how much Dennis really appreciated everything Bruce did for him.
Yeah, I've seen it credited where on some reissues of the album it shows Bruce as singing on I think all of the tracks on the album. And obviously you can tell that the end of the show arrangement is very Bruce style vocal arranging, but I think he sings really throughout the album. So that's probably largely that being the reason why he got that shout out, as well as, you know, like Matt mentioned, him showing Bruce how to play piano way back when.
hmm Also, have you seen that picture of Carl wearing like the Dennis shirt and he kind of like makes like he kind of like does like an imitation of like the face that's on the shirt?
Yeah.
There's a picture right there. Yeah, it's a nice picture. I did want to mention one thing before I get into this. I did forget to mention the two singles that were released off this album. River Song backed with Farewell My Friend and You and I backed with Friday Night. Neither charted. Um,
Two killer singles though.
I know.
Holy shit.
Yeah, the great songs. Yeah. One final quote I just wanted to share that kind of is, I thought it was an interesting quote just because like it kind of shows like kind of the loose atmosphere of the recording sessions, like of when they were making Pacific Ocean Blue. So this one's from Ed Carter, who of course the Beach Boys' longtime studio bassist and with the live band as well. Ed Carter said that a lot of times Dennis didn't have the musical terminology to express an idea. He wouldn't say we're going to go from 4/4 to 6/8 here. Dennis would dance around and do body language to express what he wanted, literally dancing around to show you the feel of what he wanted in a solo or in a passage, or he'd sing an idea out to you, which I think is really cool. You know, the fact that like, you know, this isn't like some guy where he's like really musically trained or anything. He, you know, was very loose with these sessions. I know I read that a lot of the players, multiple players, I think Bobby Figueroa was one of them, who said that Dennis was always open to like suggestions and ideas from them. Like it wasn't something where it was like, okay, this is what we're going to do and you're going to follow it. It was, you know, if someone had an idea or wanted to try something new, you know, Dennis would be very open to it. And it just like it was a very good atmosphere for everyone involved with making this album. So I thought that that
I
was
think that touches on a really cool point that there are quite a few moments on this album that don't have drums and that are very like sparse in the percussion. However, since Dennis is a drummer at heart, even the drumless moments are very rhythmic, and all of the songs on this album have like a pulsating, strong rhythm to them, even if they're like lacking a lot of drums.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it kind of shows you that you don't have to be like classically trained to really, you know, record music and really like, you know, put something together. If you got it in you, you can get it out on the on tape and just let go, you know.
right. You just kind of need the system around you, you know. And with Dennis, he had Greg Jacobson, who had been, you know, longtime friend of his, and really, from what I've read, kind of helped lead the sessions. Like he was kind of the guy that was like, okay, we're gonna record this song now, and then we're gonna record this song. So he kind of helped steer the ship a little bit for Dennis. And then obviously the other musicians were very talented themselves and were able to contribute their own suggestions and parts as well. So.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes like I find with some people when they're like too technically proficient, sometimes the music lacks soul.
Mm-hmm.
Always the case, but I definitely can, you know, see that with certain people.
All right, are we ready to get into the track by track run through of Pacific Ocean Blue?
hmm
Totally.
All right, so let's open it up. The first track in side one, which is River Song. So for me, this is one of the clear highlights of the album and also of Dennis's career. I think it really introduces you to his songwriting around this time and also just the overall sound that he was going for. It's a very soulful track with lyrics about kind of being with nature and getting away from the city life. Dennis gives it a really passionate lead vocal, and the backing vocals also have a very kind of gospel-y sound to them, which I think really suits the song well. I also really love the heavy production of this track. You have that really powerful blend of piano, synthesizer, the drums, and then the just layers of vocals. It's just a really incredible song, and it's one that I honestly did kind of sleep on a little bit in the past, I'll admit. I think on a couple of previous episodes of the podcast, I said that I like this song, but I didn't rate it quite as highly as some other people do. But re-listening to it multiple times, preparing for this episode, I was just really blown away by it. So, really amazing song. I also want to mention I love the bass vocals towards the end, like the rolling, rolling, rolling down river. I think that's Dennis doing that, but I really like that a lot too. So, really cool song and highlighted the album for sure. So, great way to open it.
Yeah, I think it's a very moving, beautiful song. It's kind of got like that Spectre-y vibe to it. Like, I love like the production on it. I love, love, love Dennis's vocals, very passionate. I love Carl's backing vocals. You can still, even with like all the choir and everything, you can still pick him out like clear as a
Mhm.
veil. He sounds incredible on it. Great way to start off the record. This is kind of like I guess this is like the A sides, environmental song because we have like one on the B side as well. I think too that so this track was actually the Beach Boys had attempted to record. They performed this live in the early 70s and they attempted to record it, but it had never been finished. And also they actually ended up putting this on their 10 Years of Harmony compilation, which is pretty cool. It's also got Billy Hinsche on there doing some backing vocals. He does some bass vocals too, and he plays some guitar on it. And then also has Ed Carter, Ricky Fataar, and Ed Toluha. So quite a few people in the Beach Boys camp. Great way to start off the record. Love this song. Beautiful song.
So man, oh man, does this start the album off with a heavy hitter? If there is like one word I could say to describe the song, it would be dynamic. It has really tender, touching moments, and then these just larger than life, cinematic, over the top moments that are just so emotional and heavy, like Jake said. And so it's just extremely creative songwriting. And I love the way that the music doesn't really follow like a typical verse, chorus, verse, bridge kind of structure. It ebbs and flows kind of just like the river. So I think it's just a really profound work and a masterclass in creative arranging because the song itself isn't extremely musically complicated as a composition, but the production takes it to such heights that it's just like jaw-dropping.
Mhm.
So I think it really starts the album off on a high note, and it takes a lot of the little influences we've heard from Dennis on Beach Boy recordings. Takes a little bit of like the rock from All I Want to Do or Slip On Through, and then it sort of meshes it with some of the drama of Carry Me Home
Mm.
or the stuff he did on Carl and the Passions. So it's a very logical follow-up to what Dennis had done with the Beach Boys, but it just has his own spin and it's so powerful. And I guess one thing I'd want to add just as a little bit of trivia is like you guys mentioned, the Beach Boys did start recording it, and the skeleton of what became the final version is what they started. So that's why you've got Ricky's drum track, Billy Hinsche on guitar, and so it's it evolved from that Beach Boys recording into that final Dennis Wilson version. But that's why so many Beach Boys or Beach Boy touring members sort of are on that track.
That's really cool. I never knew that. That is very cool. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's like cinematic. That's exactly how I would describe it. It's like you play this. This was actually used in the movie Marley and Me, actually, which is a very sad movie. But yeah, I think that's a perfect description.
Yeah, everything you guys said. If I had one complaint about it is that the guitar is nowhere near as loud enough as it should be. If you listen to that 74 version with Billy Hinsche, like that guitar riff is incredible. It's like the right amount of overdrive and jangle, and it's just I feel like that fits Dennis's song more, but I mean, I guess it's ultimately Dennis didn't really want it that loud, I guess. But besides that, very dynamic song. I really like that little breakdown in the middle where it kind of gets all slow and then it goes back and it's all grandiose and it's kind of everything you could want from a Dennis Wilson solo track. And I feel like even though it's not his best written song, I think arrangement and production wise is probably his best, in my opinion.
Mhm.
One thing we should note too is that there's this huge wall of pianos and all these different piano parts happening at once. And Dennis played all of the pianos on this track. So it really shows you how far he'd come from just learning in the previous decade to being, you know, able to play such masterful parts that you hear on the intro and throughout this song.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like he was like trying to take us to church with this song almost, you know?
Great
Yeah,
gospel.
the choir is amazing.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention. I know Nate, you said like that a lot of the Dennis's songs on here, including this one, are kind of more unconventional. Like they're not just following the basic like verse chorus structure. And I feel like a lot of my favorite tracks on this album are the ones like that, where they are kind of more adventurous and they're kind of going off into their own thing. They're not really following the traditional songwriting form. I think that Dennis's songwriting was often at its best when he was really being experimental. So this one's a great example of that. So definitely a highlight for
Yeah,
me.
this stuff almost kind of reminds me of like Smiley Smile and Pet Sounds and like
Yeah.
how unconventional the structures are.
All right, so the second track on the album is "What's Wrong." So this one is kind of a mid-tempo R&B song. Kind of has a groove similar to something like "Got to Know the Woman." I think it's a fun little song, but for me, this is definitely one of the weaker tracks on the album. I think Dennis gives it a good vocal, and I do like the use of horns throughout the song. But overall, this one just doesn't really jump out at me or stick with me in the way that a lot of the other songs on the album do. It just kind of chugs along. So it's decent, and I do enjoy it in the context of the album, but I don't consider it an essential track. So
This is a song that I notice a lot of people in the fandom really don't like, but I've always really liked it. I just think because it's so like funky and bluesy, and I think that's just Dennis's wheelhouse. And yeah, like I think like yeah, he has like the good vocal. I love some of the lyrics too, like your words drip with honey while you spend my money. Love the way you move me, love the way you groove me. I believe in rock and roll. I don't know. I just really like this song. I just think, like I said, it's got a great funky vibe. It's very bluesy. I love the horn, like you mentioned, and I just think it's like a really fun. It's a fun song, just kind of about like the power of music, the power of rock and roll. Is it one of the weaker tracks on the album? Yes, I would agree with that, but I still really enjoy it. So I always play it. I don't skip it.
Nate.
Yeah, I love this song. Add it to the list of like Beach Boy odes to how great rock and roll is, whether it's Do You Remember or Spirit of Rock and Roll or rock and roll music. They make really good songs about rock and roll.
Rock and roll to the
Um, Rock and Roll to
Those
the
are not
Rescue,
great
there we
songs.
go. Um, so yeah, this song this is like a turn it up in the car kind of song for me. Like it's really like fun. I also love if I ever am like playing the drums, I love to play this song along with the recording because it's got such a great groove. To me, this song really fits in. I could picture this song on 15 Big Ones or Love You. And I kind of see it almost as like the cousin to Mona. Like the chords are very similar and the kind of swing and shuffle feel are very similar. So yeah, I think it's just got a great kind of late 70s Beach Boys throwback kind of feel that they were doing on their albums as a group as well at this time. So I remember hearing Dennis saying that this song was inspired by the way that Brian played piano. And Dennis had spent so much time listening to Brian write songs with that pounding piano kind of feel that Brian loved. And so I think this was like Dennis sort of like giving a nod to Brian and that like famous Brian Wilson piano pounding. And so I love this song. It's a lot of fun.
I gotta disagree with you there, Nate. I gotta disagree with you. I don't think it's a cousin to Mona. I'm one of those Beach Boys fanboys that do not like this song. I just think it's fine. It exists. I love Dennis, and I definitely agree with you there. It's definitely an ode to Brian's piano playing. If I remember correctly from what the hell is that guy's name? Oh my God. That book I read over the summer, Becoming the Beach Boys book.
Tim
Jim
Murphy.
Murphy.
Jim Murphy. He's gonna hate me if he hears that. I forgot his name. Great guy though. But I remember in his book, I'm pretty sure you mentioned that Brian and Dennis actually both learned boogie woogie piano from their mother, Audrey.
Hmm.
Obviously, Brian carried that far more than Dennis did. But so I guess like, there is that aspect to it. But in terms of the actual songwriting, I don't care for it. I think it's definitely fine in the context of the album, but I am never returning to that one. I know it's a lot of harsh words, but I do like this album. So just the weakest song in my opinion.
I don't think that opinion is very unpopular because I have consistently seen this song regarded as one of the weakest on this
It
album.
exists. It's not
It's
bad.
like it's almost like a really like grooving slow Little Deuce Coupe. Da,
It's
da,
fun.
da, 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 da. It's like that same feel, but like a 70s version
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
like the little Deuce Coupe. Yeah, little Deuce Coupe on this play my rock and roll. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wrong.
yeah,
It
It's
would be
not
really
bad
cool to
by
hear like if Mike or Al or like one of the Beach Boys like did a verse on this. I could picture that.
yeah. I could see that too. Yeah,
it's not bad by any means, but it's just to me though, I'm not returning to it.
there's not enough going on in it for me, or going on. But yeah,
It definitely is like a jam and not
Yeah,
necessarily
I
like
think
a
that's the
moving number.
I think that's the point though. It's supposed to I kind of see it almost like a throwback to like where kind of rock's roots lie with like kind of more bluesy, kind of simple chords. You don't need like, elaborate like production and all this
yeah.
like key changes and everything. That's just how I see it.
I will say, I bet this
Amen.
one, if that tour had ever happened, that Pacific Ocean Blue, like that little mini tour Dennis was planning on doing, I'm sure this one would have been a fun one live though, for sure. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
all right. So the third track on the album is Moonshine. So for me, this one's definitely a return to form. I actually wish that this was the second track on the album instead of What's Wrong. I think this is a really moving song, and it's one of several on the album that seems like they're kind of about the end of a relationship. I think Dennis said in an interview that this one was about Karen Lamb, which you can definitely see that kind of reading the lyrics of this one. Like River Song, I really like how this one starts out more quiet and stripped back. You have just Dennis's vocal and that cool tech piano sound. And then it quickly gets really heavy with the Moog bass and the synthesized strings. Again, just a really great arrangement. I think it gives the song a lot of feeling and emotion. And Dennis's backing vocals at the end are very moving as well, like the "Gone Away." I really like that. So, really great track, really moving, and I really like it.
Yeah, very emotive vocal. I kind of like the beginning where it's like almost like a little like vocalization, like the huh, like at the beginning of the song before the lyrics come in. This is also an interesting, like you said, where it kind of starts off stripped back and then it kind
Mhm.
of comes in and it gets more. There's more, very very haunting vocal, very beautiful song. I also just really like the analogy of using moonshine to like how who made my moonshine intoxicate me,
Mm.
like kind of saying like you said like it's like a relationship that you kind of fall really deep into, but then it's like now it's ending and like how can I move on from this? Beautiful song.
Yeah, this song is definitely worlds away from Fun 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 and County Fair. And it's like the opposite of high school and fun. This one's like you can just truly feel like the pain coming through the grooves of the record, and it's so raw and so vulnerable, and you have to be brave to put out stuff this raw and tender and not commercial but just like truly bearing your soul. And so again, like, most pop music, you start here and you go here and oh, remember this? And okay. And what I love about Dennis in this song is, you start with these small ideas and they just grow bigger and bigger and bigger and more grandiose and very melodramatic, and not to return to this word, but very cinematic too. Like when I listen to this album, I imagine almost like a movie in my head because the songs just like really take you places through
Mhm.
the way they sound. And yeah, this is a great vocal performance by Dennis. Just really earnest and really sincere.
This one almost, like you said, Nate, it almost has like a Western feel at the start, like with the tack piano and
Hmm.
a little bit.
You said a Western feel?
I
Tack.
can kind of see what you mean. Not necessarily like the like doom 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 kind of like classic like banjo playing kind
Yeah,
of
not
Yeah,
Western,
spaghetti Western,
like
but
like
like,
yeah,
the like an orchestration for like a Western movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
Or like something you'd like see like in a saloon in a Western movie. Like they
That's saloon.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
like that. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Riley.
I'm gonna hit you guys with this one again. It's definitely better than the one before. I think it's much better than the one before. I think it is a great ballad, but and maybe this is because of my lack of listening to this record. I'm a Dennis Wilson fanboy to a degree, but I just never really returned to this record too much. I think if I listened to it a lot more, I would like it. But from what I have listened so far, it's, as you guys said, cinematic. I love the arrangement, the orchestration is very slow, moving ballad. But I think this is one of those cases though where his voice actually like amplifies the song. It makes it a lot better and a lot more emotional compared to what could have just been some average 70s pop singer sing like a ballad where I feel like I would have
Mhm.
fallen asleep. I feel like that's what's really keeping me going in this song is actually his voice rather than the actual arrangements. But I actually like some of the chord changes in this one. It kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I like it when artists do that in a song, especially ballads, where you kind of have an idea of where it's going to go, but then he kind of throws a different chord your way, and I think that's awesome. I need to listen to it more, but I do have it saved, and I really did enjoy it. I just not so much, not as much as you guys, I think.
Is it like just too over dramatic for you a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit.
No, I mean
But
that's fair.
I did enjoy it though. I don't think it's a bad song, and I think there's a lot going on for it. I just gotta listen a little bit more.
Yeah, I
Yeah, this
will.
one definitely is like less about like melody and more about like vibe. And one thing I want to say too is those I love the drum sound on this. Like you can just picture Dennis like really smashing those drums. Even though it's a pretty sparse part, the drums just sound so fat and huge.
Mm. I do agree too, Riley, that like Dennis's vocals definitely elevate a lot of these songs, like especially like with the heavy arrangement already. The fact that Dennis's vocal is so soulful definitely adds a lot because I, like you said, I really couldn't imagine anyone else singing these songs. And if there like if another Beach Boy had sung this, it probably would not connect with it near as much. So
Definitely. I think that goes a long way with the songs. And I feel like that's honestly why like Make It Good is so shitty because it's just like so average. And then beyond average, it has overproduction. I feel like if you had like 1977 Dennis singing that and then you dialed down the production, that could have been like a fire song. But
it probably would have fit in okay with the Pacific Ocean Blues stuff, to be honest, if you had changed
yeah,
the a bit. Yeah,
I've
but
actually heard some people compare his vocals here to Tom Waits on this album
yeah, in
because of
like
how
well,
gravelly it is.
kind of hoarse way. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, so the fourth song on the album is Friday Night. So this is another kind of slower, funkier track. It has a very atmospheric sound to it with all the different keyboards that Dennis used. I think he plays pretty much all the keyboards on this, which is pretty cool. Honestly, though, this is another one that I think works well in the context of the album. And I'll also say that I do prefer it to What's Wrong. But compared to some of the other tracks in the album, I'd probably consider this as one of the less essential ones. That said, though, I do think the production is really neat and it does elevate the song for me. So I think it's solid and I do enjoy it in the album, but it's not a favorite of mine.
So for me, I would say I kind of have some similar feelings. It works good in the context of the album. It's a little half baked for me. It
Yep.
almost feels like
Yep.
it's not a complete song, which is a problem I don't really have with What's Wrong. I think What's Wrong feels more complete. I do like the production on it. I kind of like how passionate this thing is like, shirts off, your motorcycle riders. And this is him kind of getting a little philosophical because he's like, I believe my Jesus is in my soul, which is
Mhm.
interesting. And I'm not sure what white punks is referring to, but I guess like punk rockers, I don't know. But
Nate can get into that.
and they can get into that. I would just say, yeah, I like the vibes of it. I like the production. I just wish it was a little fleshed out more. But it does have a good vocal, and I do like the line about Jesus. And I'm not even like super religious. I just like that line.
Yeah, I think the whole like white punk line, it was like very primitive in the days of like punk rock. So I think he was more just talking about like the Beach Boys when they were young kids playing rock and roll. And what I love about this song is when most people think about the Beach Boys' really early days playing music in Hawthorne, it's whether you're watching the Disney documentary or the John Stamos produced TV movie, those early days in Hawthorne are given like a very quaint, commercial, appropriate filter over what those days were like for the band.
Mhm.
But when you really think about it, they were like young guys playing rock and roll, which was largely considered like inappropriate music. They were getting into antics with hookers and substances and all these things. So they were like punks in a way. And it's just now we're so far removed from that era of their lives that it's painted over a little bit. So to me, this song really captures like what that must have felt like for them. It's Friday night, they're going to play a show and just that excitement, but the tension and the energy. And the song just like paints such a cool picture of what it must have felt like for them to be like young kids playing rock and roll.
this one, this one was this one was fucking good. I really liked this one. This especially on a re-listen. When I was doing my homework for this particular episode, kind of stood out to me a lot. I like the long, drawn out opening, and then you get into a little bit of that funky groove, and then Dennis's like raspy like voice really like hits on this one. I particularly loved it in this song. And with the white punks part, I guess it couldn't really tell you if that was to mean the Beach Boys themselves, which were a massive influence on punk rock in the US and the UK, believe it or not, or the actual punks in the UK. Because this time the record came out, it was 76, I think, when they're making it, and 77 when it was released. So punk rock was kind of hitting the scene. But either way, I think this one had a groove. Dennis was like belting the vocals, and it's one of the clear standouts on a re-listen. Definitely one I've added to my playlist. I enjoyed this one a lot.
All right, so the next track on the album is Dreamer. So this is one that I remember the first time I heard it, it didn't do much for me at all. And re-listening to it a few times, it still hadn't clicked. But within the past, I would say 5 or 6 months or so, this one's really grown on me a lot. And I'd say that I really like it now. It's another funkier track with a really cool arrangement. I really like the electric piano on this. I think it's that Fender Rhodes piano. I really love the sound of that. And then also just the use of horns and the bass harmonica, which I believe Dennis plays. That's like that really kind of unique sound that opens the song. I also really like the guitar solo towards the end of this song too. It really rips. I believe it's like right after the bridge. And I think that that definitely adds a lot to the track. I still wouldn't say it's like one of my absolute favorites on the album, but this one has definitely grown on me a lot, and I do think it's one of the better, funkier songs on the album. So I really enjoyed this one.
I love this song. First of all, I love like the tuba, like the boom boom boom. Love that sound. I love the drums, like the drum sound. This song is so good. It's like so full of energy. I love like when the breakdown happens where like the song kind of slows down. It's like let the wind carry your blues away. I love that song. I really love the lyrics. I love the way Dennis sings it. And if I'm not mistaken, he played most, if not all, of the instruments on this track. So that is really cool. He played like a good chunk of them. So I mean, like, just like the fact that he was like playing tuba and shit is kind of incredible. Yeah, I really love this song. I really do. I love the funky vibe of it. I like the lyrics. I like the vocals. I think it's a song that is very relatable. It's kind of like, about like following your dreams and, like keep going, like even like, when times get tough. And yeah, it's just an awesome song.
Yeah, what I think is really cool about this one is it takes the creative like color palette, so to speak, from Pet Sounds and Smiley Smile and Friends with all the unique instrumentation, but it totally gives it like a funk rock R&B spin. And so I love how you hear that bass harmonica like you guys mentioned and all the different horns and it's just this was actually one of the songs that jumped out to me the first time I was getting into this album. I just thought it really rocked. And like I said, it takes those interesting arranging choices from a lot of the Beach Boys, like most experimental stuff, but it almost makes it more accessible by just putting it in a rock and roll setting. So I think it's a great groove and an inspiring lyric as well.
Dude, this one's fucking awesome. Yeah, continuing from the last one, but like make it funkier. He has like a really good flow with his lyrics and the vocals. I particularly love it. And like, I don't want to always bring him up, but kind of reminds me of the Stone Roses with the vocal cadence, like Ian Brown with that little like swagger vocal thing going on. It's really cool, and I love that his voice, like, you don't really expect that from him. Dennis has been known for the ballads, but on this one, he's got flow. And the production's awesome. I love the arrangement. I know he's got that organ going on in the background, but I love all the horns. It's if one word was to describe this song, it would probably be swag.
We just need to make you a time machine, Riley, and to send you back to the Manchester era and you know
I I was call me crazy. I was thinking about actually like doing this song when I heard it on the re-listen. I was thinking about doing this song with my guys and like making it have a little bit of that Manchester sound, but also keeping that like Dennis swag to it.
I would be
Um,
down to listen to
Get
that.
some wah guitar on it, a good bass line. I feel like it would totally work. Dennis Wilson, 10 years ahead of the schedule, doing Manchester, 1977.
One thing with like the real like horn heavy sections of this song is it reminds me a lot of the talking French horns from the Smile sessions when Brian experimented with having like the atonal horn sections all playing like different notes and doing all that craziness. It's almost like Dennis took that idea but made it more musical with those sections on Dreamer.
All right, so the final track on side one of Pacific Ocean Blue is Thoughts of You. So this is just an absolutely gorgeous ballad. This is honestly one of the most moving and powerful songs I've ever heard. It opens with just the piano and Dennis's really tender vocals, and then you had this really beautiful and lush string section come in that I think adds a lot of emotion to the song. Maybe the most powerful part of the song is the bridge. The production gets super heavy with the strings and the Moog synthesizer, and then Dennis is just really desperate and pleading vocals. Just the way that he sings it, like that last line, that "Look what we've done," it's just really, really moving, and it gives me chills when I listen to it. So, just a really haunting yet beautiful song. And I also think knowing Dennis's life story and everything that happened to him, it makes it even more moving for me. So this is a highlight of the album and one of my favorite songs that Dennis ever wrote. I come back to this one more than just about every other song on here. So I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous. First of all, like when it starts, there's a very haunting, sparse vibe to it, where like almost like his voice is like kind of it's croaking in a way, but it's like
Mhm.
it's very moving, and you just have like the little piano in the background, like the sunshine. And then when you get to the all things that live one day must die, like you said, it just gets all the synthesizers and all of like it just kind of builds into that crescendo and almost like it kind of surrounds you in it. And like
Mhm.
Dennis, like I said, Dennis is just like singing his heart out, especially like look at what we've done. And then it goes back to the sparse arrangement, and it especially like knowing how his life ended up, it
Mhm.
almost like takes on like a very like even more melancholic and bittersweet vibe because it's just like this is a man who I don't think really ever lived up to his full potential in a way. And it's kind of sad. Well, in a way, I mean, he did, but kind of, like he still had more to
He
give. I think
he
he
was
still,
always searching for something.
he was
Seemed like.
always, yeah, he always seemed like a man that was haunted by something. And I think that this song kind of exemplifies that well. And it almost kind of makes me wonder, what would have happened if he had lived in a different time when, he could have gotten help for some of his demons. But yeah, absolutely gorgeous track. What a way to end off side one. What a way to end off side one.
You're right that look at we've done section is so haunting given like the greater context of his life, and how very quickly after he sang this, it would be abruptly ended all too soon. So a lot of like this album's really like heavy and dark themes, I think are even more noticeable and apparent when you see he was going through turmoil in real life too, like some artists are able to live a luxurious, happy life and then go in the studio and make these really sad songs and then go back on their way back to this happy life. Whereas with Dennis was really going through hard times and really channeling it and using it as therapy. And this song exemplifies that. The way it grows and builds and shrinks is kind of reminiscent of Day in the Life. I kind of compare like those
Hmm.
crescendo sections as being similar. So yeah, really innovative synth use and just like use of the studio as an instrument. So yeah, such a moving track.
It's definitely not my favorite Dennis ballad, but I definitely think it's one of the best on the album, in particular. Again, his voice oddly enough fits with these songs. I think only Dennis could really do that. I don't think anybody else really could. Maybe Tom Waits to a degree, but yeah, and I guess same as I said before with like the album, like it's just full of character. We're like, oh, I think that compositionally, like the chord changes aren't anything like to write home about. They're not like Brian Wilson like experimenting with all these sort of like key changes or chord changes or whatever. It's not that. It's just so full of heart and character. And I feel like if anybody else wrote or sang this, I probably wouldn't appreciate it. But this one's pretty damn good. And I especially think the production touches
Yeah.
it's on.
Another thing I wanted to mention too with the production, I really like how after that really heavy bridge section with the "Look what we've done," and then when it ends, you just have like the sound of like you get like that sound of like a wave, and then just Dennis's vocal coming back with the piano. I think that that's done really effectively as well. And then that little solo, I think it's like a little violin part too, as the song fades out, is really moving too. So it's one of those songs that, like Nate said, I think the context behind it and just the story of Dennis's life really adds a lot to it. But even if you don't know about Dennis's life, I still think that it's an extremely moving song, and I think it has some of the best lyrics on the album as well. I know this is another one that was about, I believe, Karen Lamb. There's a quote from Dennis. I believe he said, "It was a time when Karen had left me, and I thought it was completely over, and I accept that sometimes things are over." So just a really kind of simple quote there from Dennis that kind of sums up where his mind was at when he was writing the song. So, but it's a really beautiful track.
And I think another quote from Dennis is fitting for this song. Uh, Everything that I am or will ever be is in the music. If you want to know me, just listen.
I wrote that one too. That's a great quote. Great
Yeah.
quote. All right, so let's flip the album over and kick off side two with another ballad, "Time." So yeah, I pretty much echo everything I said about Thoughts of You for this one. I think it's just another really beautiful and haunting ballad from Dennis. I also think it's one of his most vulnerable songs lyrically. There's that line at the start. "I'm the kind of guy who likes to mess around, know a lot of women, but they don't feel my heart with love completely." Just really emotive vocals, and just the way that he sings it is just like so. There's just so much emotion to it. Also, really love the beautiful string arrangement on this. I think on this one it's synthesizer strings, but it still sounds really great. And then at the end, that really blaring, funky horn section is just super cool. You got like the blaring guitars, the rocking horns, just a really cool arrangement there. So this is another song that I just absolutely love, and it's one that I consider a highlight of Dennis's entire career as a songwriter. It's just a beautiful song.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. This is another one that kind of is cool because it kind of starts off quiet a little bit. And I also like that part where it's like the horn kind of comes in a little bit, where it's like just kind of like the one little horn that's kind of like
I think it's a trumpet. Yeah.
trumpet. Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
trumpet coming in and kind of like playing through this, like kind of like this, like in between like the bridge and everything. And then when you get to the outro, the coda, where it's like it kind of, you have like the little piano, it's like blah, 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 and it just kind of like builds up to that. It's really cool. I love that part of the song. And yeah, I think this is a song that is, like you said, it's very vulnerable. It kind of like honestly kind of describes Dennis to a T, where he's like, I'm the kind of guy that loves to mess around, where it's like that was kind of his biggest downfall in a way with a lot of his relationships, was like he never really could keep it in his pants, even though, he it's true. Even though he did love, I think he really did love a lot of the women he was with, but he just couldn't, that's how he was. But yeah, very beautiful song and a great way to start off side two. I'm a big fan of this one.
Yeah, I love the way it starts so sparsely, and you just really hear the true quality of his voice almost at a whisper. And then when it hits that moment at the end where it turns into that funky horn section, it's almost like a jump cut in a movie, or some of the Good Vibrations kind of like transition moments where it just hits you out of nowhere. And it's such a powerful payoff. And I think Dennis was really good with his music at developing these ideas and just giving the listener like a yearning feeling. And throughout this album, on almost all of these songs, there are these payoff moments where I think we keep coming back to. On almost every song, will be like, oh, this section or this section, because he's great at bringing you up, and then you hit this moment where it all kind of just blossoms. And yeah, so this is a great example of that.
Um, I think that line, "I'm the kind of guy who loves to mess around," is a little double entendre. I think it's a little call out to Dion with the Wanderer, and I know Dennis used to sing that one live.
Oh yeah, I never made that connection. That's interesting. Yeah,
He's
maybe.
Also, Dennis was kind of
a
you
horn
know,
dog.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
double entendre there. Really cool. I think this one is kind of a little bit of like Thoughts of You, but like a step down a
Mm.
little bit. I don't know, with Dennis's ballads, I want to say they're very hit or miss because a lot of them are a little samey to me. I think that he has a little bit of a formula with how he writes them, but like they will hit or they won't for me. So I think that's why some of the earlier ballads I just didn't really care for, like Moonshine. But I still think it's a pretty good song. I just if it didn't since I listened to it on streaming and not on vinyl, I think since it came right after Thoughts of You and it like immediately came after it, didn't hit as hard as it probably could have. But again, I gotta really listen to this one more. So
Yeah, I don't.
I feel like
that he put. Sorry to cut you off. I thought it was kind of weird he put two ballads back to back, but I guess on vinyl,
Especially
it's
to start off a side, like I need a banger. I need that.
Riley, you need the for you. You need the next song that we're going to be talking about. So,
yeah,
Yes, I would.
yeah,
Yes,
but
I would. And I think Jake, you know how I feel about the next song already. So
I do. I
yeah,
do.
'cause vinyl in general is like I guess if it's on vinyl, you have to get up and flip the damn thing, so it wouldn't be as jarring.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say, I know I already mentioned it, but I think honestly, like maybe my favorite moment on the entire album is that transition during that line. But I know a lot of women, and then but they don't feel my heart. I just really love the way that that's done, like with the strings coming in and everything. It's just really beautiful. So
Nate,
really kind of the heartstrings. So
did you want to say
I feel
something?
like I feel like if Dennis went to Mike on this song and said like, "Oh, Mike, can you help me with the words?" Mike would have looked at the sheet of paper and said, "You should change the words to 'I'm the kind of guy who likes to get around.'"
uh,
That would have been Mike's suggestion for sure. Wink, wink.
all right, so the next track on the album is You and I. So I think Riley's going to say a lot of the stuff that I say about this one, but it's another highlight of the album for me. I think that this is one of Dennis's best songs, one of his best melodies, and I also think the production on this is one of the best. It's one of the best sounding songs in the entire album. I can see why this one was chosen as a single. It has a very commercial sound to it, but it also manages to still be very moving, like a lot of the other songs on the album. So, really tender vocal from Dennis. I like the heartfelt lyrics about just the feeling of being in love and having that special person in your life. I also love the way that the synthesizer comes in during the second verse. And also Ed Carter's guitar work on this song is just really cool as well. The guitar has such a slick sound on it, really almost like I think I described it in the past as like almost like a tropical kind of sound to it in a way. But I really like it a lot. And I think that it suits the song really well. So this is another one of my all-time favorite Dennis songs. It's a shame that it wasn't successful as a single because I think it would have fit right in on the radio at the time with a lot of the stuff that was popular around then. But just gorgeous track, and this is one that I consider an essential song from Dennis. So absolutely beautiful.
So I have gone back and forth a bit, but this may be my favorite song on the album. I just absolutely love this song. Where do I start? The opening with like the whatever that is, that instrument, and then like the little vocalizing at the beginning, the lyrics. I've never seen the light that people talk about. You open up my wallet and dust falls out. I think that's an
Mhm.
incredible lyric. I'll never make the headline or the evening news. There'll be no rags to riches story for me, but the songs that I sing won't be blue. I love that. I think this is just a
Mhm.
great song about falling in love and just being like
Mhm.
someone who feels in love. Um, yeah, I love the guitar sound. I think it sounds incredible. I think you said tropical. I think that's the best way to put it. When
Yeah.
Dennis sings "No More Lonely Nights" is so powerful.
Oh, my lonely nights.
Another Jesus reference, so that's cool. Yeah, just an absolutely gorgeous fucking song. A crying shame that it wasn't a hit single because I think this could have done amazing on FM radio at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do think you could make the argument that this is like a somewhat proto-Christian rock album just because of how much like the Christian themes like permeate the album. Like, I don't think Dennis was like trying to convert anyone with his
oh
music,
God, no.
but he was definitely wearing his like Christian beliefs on his sleeve, like in a way not too different than like Mike and Al writing very like explicitly about their TM stuff. This was like Dennis, referencing God and Jesus a lot, which is interesting, and not what you'd necessarily expect from a member of the Beach Boys.
Mm.
Um, what I love about this song is so far on the album, a lot of the songs have like a sad or pessimistic or melancholy feel. And this is the first song on the album where you listen to it and you think like, oh, this guy still had hope and he still had optimism and he still had like wish in his heart, And
Hmm.
so I just think that that optimism really like shines through with this song. And like you hear that, Dennis wasn't maybe necessarily the guy that needed the big mansions and the huge rock star lifestyle. And it's more about just being happy with the simple things in life and being content. And so it's a really pretty song. To me, it almost sounds like uh at least songwriting and arranging wise, it could fit in on Friends. There's like a bit of that
Yeah.
Latin influence and kind of that very calm keyboard oriented sound. So yeah,
Long
really pretty. And that instrument at the beginning that Matt mentioned is a Fender Rhodes keyboard.
I
Love
love
that.
that Rhodes. Any song that has the Fender Rhodes gets points from me. I love the sound of that thing.
Same instrument that's on like Endless Harmony or My Love by Wings.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
like yeah, it's a great
Isn't
sound.
it on All This Is That too, or is that a Wurlitzer?
Yep, yeah, that's a Rhodes too.
Rhodes, yeah, love that.
Well, I'm trying to think. What was? Oh, that's the Vox Continental.
Actually, that might be like Rhodes and Whirly. That's definitely I but yeah, an electric piano on there for sure.
Yeah, love
Uh,
that
That one
sound.
actually might be a Whirly, I want to say. But anyway, not to get lost in the weeds. Love you and I.
I was trying to remember what was the keyboard sound on I'm a Believer. That's the Vox Continental organ.
Yes, it is.
Do 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 do.
Uh, yeah, favorite song on the album. No question. Not even close. As a contender to be like my favorite Beach Boys solo song. Um, maybe like the best song in the band, like if you include like all the material from like 76 onwards, might be my favorite song out of that bunch. I love this one a lot. And you're saying that this one could have been put on Friends. I actually think that this could be released today and it would be like at least like a appreciated song like within the indie scene. I feel like this sounds
Yep.
very like indie pop.
Totally.
And like it call me crazy. It sounds like if you like put Mac DeMarco's voice on there, that thing would have been a hit. No doubt. It's just it sounds so of its time, but also so refreshing and modern at the same time. Like this could have been as much a Mac DeMarco song as it could have been a Christopher Cross song. I think it's timeless. I think it's a very beautiful song. I love his voice. The guitar on it's gorgeous. Like it sounds tropical, but also sounds like it's like a nighttime like bluesy song.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, man. It's just one of the best written songs from Dennis. And when I remember like the first time I heard it, I was just so shocked. Like I know all I want to do is kind of like oh, if a Beach Boys made a song today kind of thing. But this, honestly, at least to me, same thing. I think this could be released today, and people would love it.
Yeah, it's very timeless sounding.
I
Yeah,
like listening to it at night, man. It's a mood. It's a vibe. Fucking hate that word, but it's a vibe of a song at night.
yeah. It has that really kind of like loungy soft rock sound, which was of its time. That was a very popular sound around that time. But if you look at a lot of the modern indie artists today, they kind of are going for that sound a lot, which is why I think that this would kind of translate well to one of those newer artists like Riley mentioned. So,
Hmm.
all right, the next track on Pacific Ocean Blue is the title track, Pacific Ocean Blues. So this is another one of those really kind of funkier songs on the album. I think it's a neat track with some great keyboard playing, and I also like the cool kind of environmental lyrics from Mike Love. That said, though, I wouldn't say it's a highlight of the album for me compared to some of the other material on here that we just talked about. I like the song. I think it has a cool groove to it, but I wouldn't consider it essential outside of the album. So I like it, and I think it's fun, but it's not like a huge favorite of mine personally.
So this song, I would say I do like that we have a little bit of a rocker on side B because I know we're a little ballad,
Yeah, for sure.
beginning mid tempo. I like Dennis's vocal on it. I like how funky it is. The lyrics are a little on the ham-fisted side for me. I do like some of the lyrics, like, warmed by the blood of the cold-hearted slaughter of otter. But at the same time, this is getting a little kind of like, what is that one song that's on Surf's Up?
Speaks of Eagles. Oh,
Don't go near the water or
No,
whatever.
oh yeah, that too.
That song. So you know how like that song like has like it's not as bad as that because that gets a little ham-fisted with like the toothpaste and soap makes the ocean a bubble.
Ocean's bubble bath.
But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I kind of agree with everything you say, Jake, where it's like it's a nice little funky rocker. I like it to an extent, but it's not like one of the absolute highlight on the album for me.
yeah, I think the rhythms on this song are like really interesting. Like the way the vocal cadence is over the music is really captivating. The way the lines like continue over into the next bars of music is really cool. And I like all the like slide guitars and the dobro guitars that are on this track. And yeah, it's just very bluesy. And even aside from like whatever message may be there, I think it's just like a fun rocker to turn up and groove out to.
It's a good message. It's just a little ham-fisted.
Yeah. not the first time with the Beach Boys stuff.
And not the last time with the Beach Boys.
Definitely not the last time.
It's like a gritty summer in paradise.
Summer in Paradise is like evil twin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, lyrics aside, I think the groove is absolutely killer, and I love all the instrumentation. But lyrics,
This was one that at one point was supposed to be on 15 Big Ones and didn't make the final cut.
I read that and it was like weird thinking about that. Like, damn, like this would be next to like Palisades Park and like, damn.
Yeah.
Like I love that song, but like, damn.
Yeah, we're riding the roller coaster and then we're gonna kill otters.
Yeah.
All right, the next track on the album is Farewell, My Friend. So this is another moving ballad from Dennis. Researching this album, I learned that this was originally written for Otto Hinchy, who was Billy Hinchy's dad, who Dennis was actually really close with. Obviously, he was Carl's father-in-law as well, so I'm sure that's how Dennis kind of got close with him. But they had a really tight relationship. Otto unfortunately passed away from cancer in 1976, so Dennis kind of wrote this song as a tribute to him. And then sadly, the song would also be played at Dennis's own funeral years later, which definitely makes it even more moving for me. I will say, compared to some of the other ballads on this album that we've talked about, I don't rate this one quite as highly as the others. But that said, I do still enjoy it, and I do think it's very powerful, especially given the subject matter and just the lyrics. So, pretty moving ballad. Not my favorite ballad, but I do like it a lot.
I pretty much agree with everything you say. It's definitely not my favorite ballad on the album, but I still think it's a very moving song. I like that sound at the beginning. I don't know like what it is or what instrument it is, but I quite like it. Like the whoop, 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 hard to describe. You know what I'm talking about, like on the backing track.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
very, very, yeah, it's a very moving song. I like the lyric too, like you take the high road and I'll take the low, bleh, and I'll take the low road and we'll meet again. Yeah, I just don't like it as much as some of the other ballads, but I do think definitely with the context both of like who the song is about, what it was written for, and also knowing when it was played at his funeral, I think that adds an extra layer of poignance to it.
Yeah, for me, I'd say like certain songs you don't necessarily like need every day. Like everyone has their favorites that they'll listen to every day, but certain songs are just great when you need them. They're there for you and they fit like a very specific circumstance or mood. And I can just think of times whether it was someone that I lost into the next life, or whether it was just like a friendship or a relationship that fell apart. This song just is like one of those comforting songs that make you like reflect on a relationship ending. And that way, it's like a little similar to The Warmth of the Sun in that it really has that like somber, uh, like thankful for a friendship or relationship, but sad that it's over kind of feeling to it. So yeah, this isn't one that I listen to often, but it's like it's given me comfort in times where I needed to listen to it.
yeah, again with the ballads, there's definitely a certain level of like formula there, for lack of a better term. But there is some added context to it, so I can definitely appreciate it more. But I don't know. I mean, after all these years of Dennis ballads, I mean, I don't want to be that guy because I am a big Dennis fan. I think he has some incredible songs and he's one of my favorite members, but kind of tired of the ballads a little bit, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think Riley, based on your comments so far, I think you would have liked it more if this album had a little more funk, more of the funkier tracks and a little less of the ballads. Like I personally prefer a lot of the ballads, but I also could do agree with you that like I can totally see where you're coming from. That like it does feel like there's a lot of ballads on here for sure. So
That's why I've like never really returned to it much, just because I know there's a ton of ballads and I like a couple of them, but
I think it might be the sequencing too, because some of the ballads are just like one ballad after the other.
yeah, especially on the second half on side two, with just like ballad, ballad, ballad. So
Well, I think there's kind of a thing with both Dennis and Brian Wilson that I think they said it in some a similar kind of way to I'll put it in one of the movies or something, but like with Brian and Dennis and I guess the Beach Boys in general, like even their ballads can sometimes feel like pop or rock songs, and sometimes even their like upbeat pop rock songs are like
mm-hmm,
about as like sad or melancholy as ballads are.
mm-hmm.
So like the the distinction between the two is very like blurred for them as songwriters, I feel like.
Yeah.
yeah. And like Brian, I mean, with all of his ballads, he always has like a little like angle where like he'll do something cool with the melody or like a certain like chord structure or whatever. And Dennis, it's
Yeah.
similar, samey.
Yeah, I do think for Brian, it's definitely more about like the notes and like the way he puts these
Yeah.
amazing notes and chords together. And for Dennis, it's more about like the sound of the music and maybe not as much about like the
The emotion
composition.
and like the character to it were like, I mean, Brian was like a melody guy. He didn't really write a lot of lyrics. I mean, he did down the line, but like initially, that was like all he really did was like melody.
I do kind of like how like just to make a comparison with like a lot of like Mike Love lyrics, you know exactly what he's singing about. Like way back when we were
Way
singing with
back
Barbara Ann
when
or
Oh, Matt.
looking back with
Barbara.
love or whatever it is, like with Mike, just for example, using Mike as a comparison, he there's a theme and he sticks to it and he drills it into
Every
your head that
time.
this is exactly what he's singing about. But what I like about most of these songs on Pacific Ocean Blue is they're pretty vague and you can almost like apply your own experiences or what you're going through onto these lyrics.
And then with Brian, it's just like, I went downstairs and I had a glass of milk and rollers for the child. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so,
Nate, we talked about you mentioned this album earlier, but I think you can also apply that a little bit. Not that these lyrics are quite as vague, but you can apply them to multiple things. I think of All Things Must Pass. A lot of the songs on there. You could apply those to more of a religious way, like a spiritual way, like like George. But you could also just view a lot of them as more of like a love song. Just the way that you interpret
Yeah.
can be personal to you. So. All right, the next song on the album is Rainbows. So this one was co-written by Stephen Kalinich, who of course was also co-wrote some songs with Dennis before from in the late '60s, like on the Friends album with Little Bird. I believe Carl also co-wrote this one too, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is a pretty nice mid-tempo song. I think it's a very uplifting and happy lyric, and has some really nice banjo and mandolin playing as well, which I think adds a lot to the song. Kind of like Farewell, My Friend. I wouldn't consider this one quite as strong as some of the previous tracks in the album that we've talked about, but that said, I do still like it and I enjoy it in the context of the album. So I think it's a pretty nice song and definitely kind of a change of pace from some of the really heavier ballads that preceded this. So I like the song quite a bit.
Yeah, I really quite like this one too. I think you said it best. It's like a nice change of pace. It's more like a little bit more uplifting, more. This is another one that I know Nate, you kind of talked about. Like a lot of this album is somewhat melancholy and dour. This one is, more uplifting and more inspirational. I think it's got a really nice melody to it.
Yes.
I love like the breakdown where it's like the earth opened up its arms for me when you get a feeling, and it kind of has like the strings coming in and everything. And I love. I think you can hear Carl in the backing vocals on this one, right? Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Sounds
Like, just,
pretty.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah.
Yep, I love his contribution. Yeah, I really, really, really like this song. I actually come back to this one quite a bit, even outside of the context of the album. I just think it's a very uplifting song. It's a very, I just love the vibe. I hate to use the term, but I'll use it. I love the vibe of the song.
yeah, dude, I hate that word too, but it's like the only word that actually fits.
Yeah, I really, really quite like this one a lot. Might be might honestly be my second favorite on side two or third. It's definitely up there on side two for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love the like this song is by no means a country song, obviously, but I love the way that it kind of flirts with like country and bluegrass instrumentation.
Yeah.
And it kind of has a sunflower style like lightness and airiness to
Yeah.
it. Um, so yeah, I love like the big group vocals. Like you guys mentioned, you can hear Carl and Bruce, and it's like a very Beach Boys kind of style song. Whereas some of these songs sound completely a world away from the Beach Boys. This one kind of like captures that whole breezy California kind of spirit. So definitely a good inclusion that sort of comes at the right place on the album to sort of like brighten the mood. So yeah, a really sunny song.
I could have used this song a couple of songs before. Definitely, definitely a great switch up, and it's a very optimistic, happy song. And I don't think Dennis really wrote a lot of those in the grand scheme of things, so I'm always there for it. Uh,
No.
and I love the instrumentation. I love the banjo. Like you just mentioned, the bluegrass like instrumentation. It reminds me a little bit of Cotton Fields and some of the stuff off Sunflower. A little bit, not like it's like a straight up like but you know what I mean. I definitely enjoy this one a lot more than some of the ballads I've heard, and I kind of wish we got a little bit more of that, especially on side two. But
You make a good point that he didn't really write too many like uplifting songs. And I just think that's because like I mentioned before, he was a bit of a tortured soul, and I think that a lot of those songs are kind of reflective of that. At least that's
Yeah.
my take on it.
All right, so the album closer is End of the Show. So I think that this is a pretty moving closing track to the album, especially knowing the subject matter. This is one that was written following Dennis and Karen's first separation in 1977. It's also notable that the backing vocal arrangements on this were done by Bruce Johnston, and I think that he did a really great job with them. I think that the backing vocals really add a lot to the song. Like Farewell, My Friend, I wouldn't put this one on the same level as something like Thoughts of You or Time, but I do think it's a great track, and I think it's a fitting closer to the album. So, really cool song, and I really like how Bruce contributed with the backing vocal arrangement. So, I like it.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same thoughts as you. Whereas like I don't probably choose to put this one on by itself, but I do like it in the context of the album. I think it's a great way to close off the record because I know this is like the end of like the main record is here.
Yeah,
I think that so I know that you said that he wrote this about the first time him and Karen Lamb kind of broke up.
yeah,
Uh,
it was like during their first separation, according to what I read.
I also kind of maybe kind of see this a little bit almost as like thanking the fans in a way. I know it might sound like a weird take on it, but like, th you're at the end of the show. Thank you very much.
Well, and you got Carl at the end too, saying thank you very much. I think that's recorded from a Beach Boys concert. I think
Yeah, I
so.
kind of see it as like kind of like, thank you for listening to my record. Thank you for hanging in with us for all these years. This is I know it's maybe like a bit of a corny take on it, but I kind of see it as like that too. But yeah, I wouldn't choose to put this one on like outside of the record, but I think it's a great way to finish the record.
Still, thanks for still cruising with us after all these years.
Yeah, pretty much. Just
Yeah,
10 years before that song was written.
Yeah, I don't think that that Dennis and Bruce ever wrote together, as far as I'm aware. But this song sort of like maybe like the closest thing you could point your finger to as like what a Dennis and Bruce collaboration might sound like,
mm,
because it has that guttural, emotional Dennis Wilson songwriting, but then it has that trademark Bruce Johnston vocal arranging style. And so like as soon as those vocals come in, it's immediately very Bruce, but yet I love how Dennis incorporates the guitars and just and I actually agree with Matt. Like my interpretation of the song was never necessarily like relationship oriented, and I always did imagine it as a song that's almost like the ode to the feeling of a show being finished. Um, Whether you're a performer or in the audience, I think like there's a certain type of melancholy, uh, worn out kind of feeling you get when a show is over, where you're happy it happened, but you're kind of sad it's over. And so I feel like it captures that mood very well.
Yeah, for me, I'm always in the audience, but I think you hit the head on the nail. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
It's a ballad. I don't want to beat a dead horse, man.
But
It's
that's
good.
it.
It's better than fine. I think all the ballads on here are better than fine. They're all good. It's just, dude, there's like what, 12 songs on this album? 10?
12. 12.
yeah. No,
On
it's
this
it.
album, like 8 of them are ballads.
No, it's interesting to hear your perspective on a lot of these songs, Riley. Just because like I feel like I was a while ago, like I would say like if you asked me a year ago to kind of like talk about this album and rate it, I'd probably lean more towards kind of where you're at with it, where it's like I like some of it, but like as a whole, it doesn't really click with me. Like there were definitely a lot of some of the ballads I struggled with on here to really get, and then some of the funkier songs as well. But just with repeated listening, it's just really grown on me, and I think there's just a lot of emotion in the material. I think the fact that again, like we've said, the fact that Dennis is the one singing it and also writing the lyrics, I think definitely adds a lot to it for me. Whereas like if it was some random musician who I'm not really that familiar with, I don't know how much I'd appreciate this stuff. So I think there's something to that.
So the
Yeah,
context.
I think if it was any other like singer, I would have like turned this record off like a bunch of songs ago. But because it's Dennis and like I said, he adds a lot of character to what like easily could have just been like boring songs, and it
I think
makes it very listenable and very enjoyable.
Mm.
But after a while, though, I just kind of get a little bored, and I just kind of reach for the songs I really like.
I think you told me the same thing, Jake, when we first started talking. You said that like this record for you, you liked some of the ballads and the rest of it didn't do much.
Yep,
So
that's where I was at. Like I said, yeah, it's just I wanted to like it more. I always respected the album. I thought it was really well produced and everything, but just a lot of the tracks in here, I just kind of struggled with a little bit. And then with repeated listening, and then especially this most recent listen where I really just sat down and just focused on the music, I think I definitely gained a greater appreciation for a lot of these songs. So,
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for melody though, so and I feel like a lot of the ballads are kind of missing a great melody compared to what I'm used to. But
I kind
um,
of see it largely as like a Pet Sounds of the 70s, and in that it's one person kind of detailing their emotions, like fully exposing themselves. This is how I'm feeling right now. This is the sadness I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. And just instead of coming from Brian with all of Brian's influences, it's coming from Dennis this time. But I definitely can see a link in just how vulnerable and raw those albums both are,
mhm,
and how they're much more driven by expression than by singles and radio play and commercialism.
right. Like they're not trying to necessarily sell records. Obviously, they wanted the albums to sell, but they weren't making them with the intention of, yeah, we're going to get this on the radio. It was more so a personal expression, and I think a lot of people sometimes are confused by that kind of thing, especially like, the Beach Boys given their image, especially like when Pet Sounds came out, and then, even people that bought Pacific Ocean Blue, I don't know if they were necessarily expecting this from Dennis, especially if you weren't just familiar with like some of his contributions to the early 70s Beach Boys albums. You might have thought like, oh, it's Dennis Wilson, how great can it be? And then you
Most
listen
of the people that bought the album probably knew him for The Wanderer and Do You Want to Dance and You're My
right
Miss America. That's
into it
probably what they were expecting.
like, oh, this is going to be like some up tempo, kind of like R&B Beach Boys, and
Yeah.
then you get into it and it's like, yeah, no more lonely nights. So
When you said some people may not understand that, I thought you meant like because you were talking about like getting hits on the other time. I was thinking of, like I saw this post one time that was like pop music is better when it's popular. Like that's what I was thinking. Like some people can only like wrap their
that's just stupid.
that Matt, is that a poop head's take?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's like some people can only wrap their head around like music that's like is like supposed to like be popular. I don't know. It's
Well, then
just
there's also the other crowd, where they just like if it is popular, it sucks. Then if
crap.
it's super duper underground,
See, that crowd, I almost would argue, is even more exhausting though.
They're both exhausting.
yeah, with the popular one, at least I can kind of get it.
Yeah, some things are popular for good reason. My whole thing is I like what I like. If it's popular, great. If it didn't sell anything, great. I like it.
Yeah.
That's all I
Right.
care about.
Yeah. All right, so now we want to get into we'll start out with a few of the bonus tracks that I believe were recorded around the time of the Pacific Ocean Blue material but didn't make the album. A few of these tracks were Tug of Love, Only With You, which was, of course, the Holland song, which the guys re-recorded, Dennis re-recorded, the track Holy Man, and the track Mexico. Before I share any of my thoughts, do you guys have any thoughts on any of those four songs?
I find Only With You, this version pretty moving. Holy Man was never really finished. I know this is an instrumental. Then there's the version with Taylor Hawkins from the
Mhm.
Fighter.
Oh, hell no.
We don't have to get into that. I don't know if you're familiar with that version. There's a version with members of Queen on it too.
Oh, Riley, this is just
Yeah, it's like it's right up our valley. I will say I don't really return to these as much as the main material, but I do quite like his solo version Only With You. That's all I'm gonna say on those.
I quite enjoyed Tug of Love, actually. I think I like the guitar on it. I think that was a good touch. It kind of makes things a little different compared to some of his other ballads. I also feel like it's a little higher, not higher, faster paced than like some of his like really slow burners. So I
Mm.
actually quite enjoyed it. I kind of wish it was on the album. Like even though if you took out like one of the like piano ballads and you replaced it with this one, it probably would have at least kept some sort of like flow going and not just staying the same pace the entire time. I liked it. I thought Tucker Love was good. The rest, they're fine.
Yeah, the bonus tracks, the one that stands out to me the most is Mexico. I think that's just a really haunting and gorgeous piece of music. I think in a way similar to Let Us Go Away for a While,
Hmm.
it doesn't need lyrics to express exactly what it wants you to feel. And I think it's a testament to Dennis's ability that the song is more or less just like a piece for piano, yet it's so memorable and so touching. So
Mhm.
I love that Mexico piece.
Yeah, in terms of my thoughts on those tracks, Riley, Tug of Love, I also do like quite a bit. I will say it does feel a bit incomplete, so I think I'd come back to it more if he'd done a little bit more with it. But I do like what he has. I think it's a cool idea or a cool concept. Only with you, I think it's a solid recording, but I do prefer the Holland version. I do prefer Carl's vocal on it, although I do like that this one drops the "All I Want to Do Ooh is Spend My Life with You Ooh" because I've never been a fan of that on the Holland version, so I'm glad that it drops that. Holy Man is solid but not complete. I know there's the Taylor Hawkins version, which I think is fine. And then Mexico is okay, but it didn't do too much for me. But I definitely have to give that one another listen because I know that's I've heard other people, Nate, say that they like that one a lot too. So I'll have to give that another listen. So all right, so now to wrap up, we're going to go over some of the Bamboo Sessions material. We're not going to go like through a track by track rundown like we did with Pacific Ocean Blue, but I thought it would be good for each of us to kind of share some of our favorite songs from the Bamboo Sessions that Dennis was working on. Before we get into it, Nate or Matt, do you guys want to give any general history or context about kind of the Bamboo Sessions?
I have a little bit written, so Nate, please feel free to add. So I just said that the recording of Bamboo began in 1978 at Brothers Studios. I said many of the tracks were a collaboration with Carly Munoz. The first four tracks cut for Bamboo actually were Carly Munoz compositions, so it's not too late. Constant Companion, All Alone, and Under the Moonlight. And I just said for various reasons it was never completed. I said these included the selling of Brothers Studios in 1978 to engineer Hank Sisalo and jazz musician Tom Scott. Dennis's worsening drug habits, a lack of funding, and the distractions of various Beach Boys projects. And then I mentioned that Love Surrounds Me and Baby Blue were actually originally recorded for this album, but they ended up being released on the LA Light album. And I'm very glad they were because those are two of the, at least for me, those
Yeah.
are the best songs on that record. And I'm glad that they were able to reach a wider audience instead of being shoved into a vault. And then we got them 30 years later because that's what this band loved to do was throw some of the best material in a freaking vault.
Yeah, so you summed it up very well, and I think it's really neat that as much as it was Dennis's next quote unquote solo album, it was almost equally as much a way for him to give a spotlight to Carly and a way for Dennis to pass the torch almost and like to take some of the good favor that was given to him and give it to someone that was still up and coming.
Mm.
So, I've heard Carly tell the story that when they would sound check, Carly would play these songs that he had written, and Dennis would come up to him and be astounded at how beautiful the songs were and wanted to know the names of the songs so that Dennis could learn them. And Carly would say, like, oh no, these are my songs. And so Dennis would try to convince him to record the songs. And I think it took some convincing to give Carly the confidence. But thank God that they did decide to work together because I think these are some of Dennis's greatest achievements as a solo artist. And I think that Carly's vast tapestry of different sounds that he incorporated into his writing paired so well with Dennis's singing and Dennis's producing. So I think their collaboration was just really magical. And the songs that they worked on together are just really mind-blowing to me. I love Constant Companion and Under the Moonlight and man, there's one that I'm forgetting that's one of my other favorites.
All alone.
It's Not Too Late. It's Not
Oh,
Too Late.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Such beautiful stuff.
I love
Really harmonically advanced and just really gorgeous stuff.
yeah.
I love those three too. I also really like Love Remember Me. I actually wanted to mention something. Under the Moonlight. When I was in college, a friend of mine actually knew that song, and I
Hmm.
was shocked
Wow.
he knew that. I was shocked he knew that song. I was like, because he's like, oh yeah. So I showed him a picture of me with kind of a shaggy beard, and he's like, Matt, you remind me of the guy that sings Under the Moonlight. I'm like, well, the only song I know by that is Dennis Wilson, and then he shows me. I'm like, how do you know that song? Like, I was shocked he knew that song. I was like, my jaw was on the floor. But yeah, I love all three of those songs you mentioned. Especially It's Not Too Late. Carl's backing vocals in there is incredible. Constant Companion, love the vibe of that. I know, sorry to use that word again, but very funky, like it a lot. Under the Moonlight, I think is a great bluesy number. I love the lyrics on that one too. And then it's Love and Remember Me. Yeah, so those are the ones I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, Under the Moonlight's a banger, for lack of a better term. I think there's a lot more potential in this one than the last. I feel like the last one he kind of had too many ballads. And on this, and from what you see, I mean, he definitely has a couple of ballads, but I feel like there's a lot more variety with it. Under the Moonlight's a banger. I want to see a world where Love Surrounds Me was released on a Dennis solo album because a huge fan of that one.
Mm.
And I feel like there's definitely a lot more, like I said, variety in some of this material. I kind of wish it was a bit more finished. But I don't know. Maybe that's just my take.
What I love about Bamboo is I feel like it's Dennis taking pretty much everything he did on Pacific Ocean Blue, but dialing it up to 11. It's like, oh, if you like the melancholy ballads, there are going to be even sadder, even more heartbreaking ballads on here, like All Alone. It's like, oh, if you like the funky rockers, they're going to be even more funky and even more groovy, like Constant Companion. Oh, you like the synth stuff? I'm going to give you a whole instrumental synthesizer jam song with that Common. So it's like it takes every element of Pacific Ocean Blue, but makes it even more grand.
Mm. Like it dials it up to 11, kind of.
Yeah.
For me, some of the highlights of the Bamboo Sessions material, honestly, kind of with you guys, a lot of the Carly Munoz tracks, I think, are the highlights. It's Not Too Late. I think it's a beautiful ballad. Especially love the lead vocals from Carl on this one, like the no, 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 just really, really pretty. And the song is maybe it's a little long, but honestly, it doesn't really outstay its welcome for me just because I love Carl's vocals on it so much. So, a really pretty ballad there. I think Common had potential. I like the chords on that one. Are You Real, I think, is a cool track with some cool synth guitar. Cocktails, I think this is a really moving ballad. Probably one of my favorite Dennis solo songs that wasn't on Pacific Ocean Blue. I really like the chord progression. I know I think I read somewhere that someone said it's very similar to A Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd, which if you listen to it back to back, it's definitely very similar, but it honestly doesn't really bother me that much. I think Dennis's vocals are really emotive on this one and just really desperate sounding. So really like that one a lot. Constant Companion is a really cool, fun, funky track. The keyboard part on this I wrote almost kind of reminds me of like a video game soundtrack, which is kind of a weird comparison to make, but I kind of hear that a little bit, like something like a Mario Kart game or something. So kind of hear like the do do
Yep,
do.
yep, I hear it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind
I hear it
of.
too.
Yeah. And then the track All Alone, I think, is a really moving and heartbreaking ballad. That's another Carly Munoz track, I think, but really moving song. I think that one was on the Endless Harmony soundtrack or the compilation album that they
Yeah.
put that. And on that one, I just really, really love it. I think Dennis's vocal is just so heartbreaking. You can really hear the pain in her in his voice. So, yeah, I think a lot of good material came out of the Bamboo sessions. I wish, like you guys said, that it was actually finished because I think these songs had a lot of potential. And like Riley said, I think that this one would have been unique in that it would have had a much different sound than Pacific Ocean Blue, which was much more of a ballad heavy album, where this one you're getting a lot more of that kind of funky, groovier sound. So I think it would have been a very distinctive second album, and I think it would have been a good follow up. So before we wrap up, you guys have any closing thoughts you wanted to share on Pacific Ocean Blue or just Dennis's solo career in general?
He gave us a lot of great material. A lot of moving songs. I just kind of it's always going to be a question in my mind of like, what if Bamboo was fleshed out and what if, he had lived longer to give us more. But what he did
Dennis Wilson
give
at the
us,
Century 80s.
what he did give us though was pretty damn incredible.
I'd say it proves his body of work proves that he was like the heart of the Beach Boys. And it's not only heart as in like the heart beating and providing rhythm with him being a drummer, but also like the more metaphorical meaning of like heart, like the emotion and just the soul. And so, yeah, I think with Dennis, he wasn't afraid to put all of his feelings into his music. And therefore, you have some really happy stuff of his that will lift you up on sunny days. And he has some really deep and profound stuff that will be there to comfort you on sad days. So he's just a wonderful artist. And it's too bad that his journey got cut short. But like Matt said, he left us with a ton of great material. And so it definitely was time well spent of his,
Yeah.
making music.
Like I know I talked a lot of shit tonight about the ballads, but I do think that each of them had a lot of heart and character, and you can't say that about a lot of people who write music. I would say honestly, like a good 80% of the people who have released music ever don't have as much like heart, soul, and character in the songs that he did. So and those funky rock bluesy bangers on the album are some of my favorite songs in the entire Beach Boys solo catalog. So while I'm a bit of like a Brian guy, he's definitely my favorite member, and I love his songwriting the best. Dennis always brought the heart. So great record, and I wish we got more.
Yeah.
Really would have been curious what he would have done with synths in the 80s. Would he have fallen victim, or would he stayed with his kind of roots?
McCartney too, Dennis Wilson
The
style.
Dennis Wilson McCartney too. Wilson too.
While the Beach Boys were doing stuff like Still Cruising, what would Dennis be up to with this solo career? That is
Probably would have left the
Yeah.
band at that point. God.
still surfing. Well, actually, that's another song.
Already a song, Jake.
Yes, it is. Yeah, just to wrap up, yeah, I think Dennis's music, honestly, I think it's some of the most moving music, both in the Beach Boys catalog and just his solo material too. Like you guys said, just a lot of heart and emotion in it, and that's really why his music works for me. I just think his music is just really raw and emotional, and like you said, Riley, there's a lot of artists that they don't have that heart and soul in them that they can really convey through their music, and I think that Dennis always did that. And I think you go back to that quote that Matt said earlier about Dennis saying, "Everything that I am or will ever be is in the music. If you want to know me, just listen." And I think that pretty much sums it up, and it sums up Pacific Ocean Blue. It's Dennis using his creativity and just his talent as an arranger and as a performer and as a songwriter to get his feelings and emotions across at the time. So I think it's a great album. I'm glad that I've gotten a greater appreciation for it, in the recent months, re-listening to it, because I do think it's a really great record. And I hope that this episode has helped give some of our listeners a greater appreciation for it as well. So, all right, we will wrap it up there. So thank you, everybody, for listening to this 47th episode of Good Timin. Hope you all enjoyed the show. I had a great time discussing Pacific Ocean Blue and Dennis's other solo material with you guys, and it was interesting hearing your thoughts and opinions on each of the different songs. So, as always, if you like this podcast and want to hear more, feel free to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. We greatly appreciate the support as it motivates us to make more episodes in the future. Also, as a reminder, the Good Time In podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So there's plenty of different places to listen and keep up with the show. So thank you again, everybody, for listening, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.